Hey, Facebook faithful, welcome to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks live at 5. How's everybody doing today? I am back in my own self's cubicle after an amazing last week. Many of you may have seen my video last week. I was on the road, took my show on the road. Hey, Aunt, took my show on the road and was able to work it out, did my Facebook Live last week from beautiful Addison, Texas. That's where I was last week. And I really liked that whole area in Texas, Addison. I've been to Dallas, Texas, and stayed in that area before, but never in Addison. And so going forward, I will be staying in Addison. I liked all the restaurants that were nearby because you guys know I'm a foodie. And North Park Mall, OMG. I saw some things that really I wanted to rescue and couldn't because I had a 21-inch roll-on, so I couldn't take any of that with me. But I think the next time I go back to Addison, Texas, I'm going to stow away an empty bag just so I can free some things, if you will, the next time. But anyway, I'm back. Florida Gulf Coast University was amazing. Thank you to my colleagues, the Honorable Omar Neal and Dr. Terrence Allen from Prairie View A&M, who joined me on last week. It was really a great presentation, well received there on campus, and I'm looking forward to doing more of that. So let's get started. Didn't get a chance to put up my Facebook notification. Uh-oh. Did I do something? Oh, we're back? For some reason, I couldn't see you, and I was kind of freaking out. So I'm glad that we're still there. And, yeah, glad that worked out. So, do me a favor and, hey Hassan, do me a favor and share this on your timeline as you come on. And I'm going to do the same thing. Didn't get a chance to do my Facebook Live announcement on Facebook. So I'm trying to kind of catch up now and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to see this broadcast. So help me out, share it live on your timeline, and let me see. I want to start off by I want to revisit something that I talked about on my podcast. You guys know my podcast drops every Tuesday, new content, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. Subscribe to it on the platform of your choice. I'm on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeart, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. I'm on all of them. Just find one. Find a podcast platform and subscribe to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. I did want to share with you something that I spoke about on my podcast on yesterday, only because I think it's something that bears repeating, and many of you who may not subscribe to podcasts might have missed it, and so I want you to know what you missed. I talked about the fact that there are all but four states that have some form of law which is referred to as a felony murder law. So this felony murder laws exist in all but four states. And what the felony murder law basically is it says that if you're with someone and you're in the commission of a crime and there is a death, whether you caused the death or someone else caused the death, you will be charged with the murder that your co-conspirator, your partner in crime, if you will. And so there's a cautionary tale in Alabama because they are one of those states that has the felony murder laws, where a young man, very young man, was involved in a burglary with some buddies. It was about 5 of them involved in a burglary. One of the guys that was with him had a gun. And so when the police responded to this burglary call, they saw this young man with a gun, shot and killed him. And so as a result of that, the accomplice, the co-conspirator in that burglary, was sentenced to a total of 65 years. Now, the young man that was sentenced to 65 years is only 18 years old right now. His name is Lakeith Smith. And that 65 years includes charges for the burglary as well as the murder. The murder that was committed by a police officer responding. So, it's important that we have conversations with our young people about the kind of folks you hang around with, the company you keep, and if you guys are going to be doing crimes together, you ought to at least want to make sure that your partners are not carrying a gun and does something stupid where somebody gets killed, because then you're going to be found guilty in the murder of that person. And so that's what happened with Lakeith Smith, 18 years old, going to prison for 65 years. You guys, forgive me, excuse me, but I don't know what it is about Facebook Live and my nose, but every time I come on, it starts running. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Lakeith Smith, 18 years old, 65 years in prison for a burglary. And this was because it resulted in the death of a young man by the name of Adante Washington, and that was in Alabama. So the other co-conspirators that were involved in that burglary, they all took a plea deal. They got, I think, 25 years for their role in the burglary. But this young man, Lakeith Smith, I guess he's just a thrill seeker, because he decided that he wanted to roll the dice and take this thing to a jury trial. And so, yeah, be careful. Every choice has a consequence. And so it'll be a long time before we see Lakeith Smith, because the sentences that he was given were consecutive. And so that means back to back. There will be no serving, part of the murder while you're serving part of the burglary, and whatever other charges they had against him, they run concurrent. So back to back to back to back. Another reason, you guys, now listen, what he did was wrong. They were committing crimes, and I get that. But gee whiz, 18 years old and 65 years, that doesn't even seem fair. It seems very harsh. But we are talking about Alabama, right? So listen, that's why I say it's so important, for us to be part of the jury panels. And I'm certainly guilty of dodging jury summons, back in the day. I haven't received one in a minute, but, who wants to go to jury, go and be on jury duty? But when you see these kinds of outcomes in trials, then you understand why it's important that we should, participate in, that's our civic duty, right? Get on a jury. So that's what you missed if you didn't subscribe to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks podcast. So you need to make sure that you do that as soon as we're done here. I don't want you to tip away right now, but as soon as we're done, sign up, subscribe to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. The first story that I want to share with you is kind of an update on the, I'm going to share the link with you as well, on the Laquan McDonald shooting. This shooting just will not go away. But what's going on right now with Jason Van Dyke, the police officer who shot and killed Laquan and was sentenced several weeks ago? He was only given 6 years, 6 years and 9 months for the shooting death of Laquan McDonald. Now, they tried to make us feel all good about, that whole prosecution, because they charged him with all kind of counts, 16 counts, one for every bullet, and then they wound up giving him 6 years for this young man's life. So the Attorney General Kwame Raoul and Kane County State's Attorney Joseph McMahon are asking the Illinois State Supreme Court to intervene over what they believe is a very lenient sentence for Jason Van Dyke. And so on February 11th, it was reported that the prosecutors were going to be asking the Illinois Supreme Court to review Officer Van Dyke's 6-year sentence in the fatal police shooting of Laquan McDonald. So as I see more about that, I will let you know what that outcome eventually is, and I'll report back to you. Now, there's another story that a couple of people have shared with me, and I'm going to provide the link as well for this. It involves a 20-year-old young man who was allegedly sleeping, and I'm going to say sleeping in air quotes, right? Sleeping in his car in a fast food parking lot. Now, let me say this, because I might say something here in a minute that's going to rub some folks the wrong way, but I'm going to kind of put on my mommy hat up under my sergeant hat, and so I'm going to say some stuff that you may not want to hear, but I'm going to say the truth. And with all that I say and do, your agreement is not required for those of you who might feel some kind of way in the next 10, 15 minutes, okay? So here's the deal. This young man, McCoy, up in Vallejo, California, and evidently, if you look at the article, there's some links to some things that are going on in Vallejo that have been occurring for years that seem to be pretty problematic when it comes to black folks and police in Vallejo, California. So, if you understand, and it's not just Vallejo, this is something we see national, police do not have a problem shooting unarmed black men, so they won't have a problem shooting an armed black man, even if you're in an open carry state. So my best counsel would be, don't carry a gun. Even if you can carry a gun, and I know you guys know your rights, don't carry a gun. And listen, California is not open carry, so I don't know why this 20-year-old kid had a gun in the first place, but this is the way the story goes. So this young man was seen slumped over in his car in a drive-thru for Taco Bell. Employees were concerned, rightfully so. He's blocking the drive-thru, 10 o'clock at night, and they called 911, and police responded to see what was going on with this young man who was either slumped over the wheel or sleeping in his car at 10 o'clock in the Taco Bell drive-thru. So police respond, and they contact the driver. His name is Willie McCoy, and they see a gun. Now, it's not clear in the report whether or not he raised the gun, if he reached for the gun, if it was in his lap, but nonetheless, it's not refuted that he had a gun. The family doesn't deny that in their statements. They don't deny the fact that he had a gun. And so, you know what happens when police officers see a black man with a gun. They opened fire, and they fired off multiple rounds. All 6 officers that were on the scene fired multiple rounds, striking this young man, and tragically, he lost his life in the drive-thru at a Taco Bell. So, of course, the family is upset, and they are alleging racial profiling. And so, this is one of those situations where I don't believe it's a matter of racial profiling. Let me say that to start, because the 911 call came in from employees who had a legitimate reason to call the police. So it wasn't like the police just saw this young man and decided to stop him at 10 o'clock at night for no good reason. They were there. They had a legitimate reason to be there. And it's unfortunate that this thing ended up the way that it did. But, it's going to be very difficult for the family to argue that Willie McCoy was racially profiled, and thus their position is the shooting was unjustified. Great deference is given to what a police officer says, and I don't believe for a minute that there's a jury anywhere that will not side with the officers that fired rounds. Now, listen, it could be a training issue maybe if the police chief has an appetite for that and finds any fault with what the officers did in terms of the number of rounds that were fired. I don't know how many rounds were fired, and listen, it was all 6 officers reportedly that fired their weapon. Now, was it contagious gunfire? Is that what happened? When one officer heard a shot, everybody just started shooting, not really knowing, if the shot was coming from the guy sleeping in his car, or slumped over the wheel, or if they thought it was, I don't know what the officers thought. Clearly, I'm not in their head. But listen, great deference is given to what officers say, and their version will be believable. It would be reasonable. And so it sounds like this young man may have had some things going on in his personal life. There was a brother who was reported to say that, he'd kind of had a tough life. Now, the brother is 50. This young man is 20. So there's a significant age difference there. But if what the article says is true, the brother says that Willie McCoy lost both of his parents and had kind of been struggling and, having a tough go of it, if you will. And, I don't know if that's why he had a gun or carried a gun. I don't obviously have those answers. But, what the family said is that, this was a racial profiling situation and the police should have just used a bullhorn, is what they said, to get his attention, wake him up, and get him out the car. So, the problem I have with that is that you don't really get to tell us how to do police work. And, if you are carrying a gun and police encounter you, you don't get to tell the police how to respond if you have a gun, because I promise you, if while I was working in patrol, I encountered anyone with a gun, and certainly there were a couple of people, not many, but there were a couple of people that I encountered who were in possession of a handgun. Nobody pointed it at me. I found it during the commission of a search for my safety to make sure they weren't armed, and discovered one. But nonetheless, if you have a gun and you raise it, you point at it, you reach for it, you show it, bad things will happen. If I'm a police officer and I see a gun, what I can tell you for sure is we will not be having a conversation. There's nothing that I will say to you at that point. And so clearly these officers acted in what I think would be an appropriate manner, given the fact that this young man had a gun. And so, I don't know, the family's going to have to take a little responsibility in whatever was going on with this young man and why he was slumped over. I haven't heard, because it's too new to know, if toxicology reports are going to point to something that may have been in his system that rendered him either unconscious or unable to operate his vehicle. Those are all things that will come out later. But listen, up in that part of town, police are showing you time and time again that they do not have a problem handing you your ass, shooting you and killing you, roughing you up, and then, if need be, then they'll just, settle with the family. It was reported that in 2015, Oakland police killed a man who passed out in his car, and the officials were claiming that he abruptly woke up, and they said that he did what? He reached toward a gun on the passenger seat. Now, we don't know if he really reached toward the gun on the passenger seat or not. It seems nonsensical that a black man would reach for a gun when police officers stop him, but guess what? He's not here to tell his story, so we don't know. And that great deference was given to the officer's version. Thus, his family was awarded a $1.2 million settlement. So, I tell you all the time, police departments, cities have tremendous amounts of money that they will give to a family when they kill you. And so I'm, advocating for you to live. I'm advocating for you to survive that police encounter. And I'm advocating and imploring you to not put yourself in harm's way, young people, because they will settle. They'll make no substantive change with regards to policy or procedure. In some instances, they will double down, like I reported last week on the officer who shot and killed Amantic Bradford Jr. That mayor said, listen, I stand by that officer, and we will vigorously defend him and our city. And I'm talking about in the case of the shooting of Amantic Bradford Jr. on Thanksgiving, I believe it was Thanksgiving night, in Hoover, Alabama, in the South. Y'all still carrying guns in the South? Black people? It makes no sense to me. So anyway, back to that northern area, Oakland, Vallejo. There are very many scandals that have been reported alleging police brutality against black folks, particularly black people in Vallejo. So, and for anybody who doesn't know where Vallejo is, that's about 30 miles northeast of San Francisco. So there's certainly documentation, there's certainly video evidence of police officers beating people up. 2017, a Vallejo officer straddled a man on the ground, repeatedly striking him in the face. There's video of that. I would imagine that there was probably some sort of settlement at the end of that ass whipping. There was another violent arrest that went viral just last year with a video showing an officer striking a man on the ground with either a flashlight or a baton. And so, all of these things are going on up there in Vallejo. Last month, a Marine veteran accused a Vallejo officer of assaulting him. while he was trying to film his cousin who was being arrested. And so listen, sometimes it may not be you. It may be you taking some kind of action that legally, rightfully, you should be able to do, right? Recording a family member who's being taken into custody because you want to make sure that they're okay. Or, we hear that you can record, police departments will say that, you can. But then when you do, you run across that one officer out there who wants to, in this case, take a flashlight to your head. So, Vallejo, I don't know, maybe it's time for somebody up there to reach out to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks and let me come and talk to those young people and your police officers and figure out how we can bridge this communication gap, figure out how we can save some lives up there. And so for anybody who might be listening and who may be inclined to want to have that kind of discussion, www.sergeant.sgt.dorsey.speaks, or reach out to me at my email address, which is sgt.dorsey.speaks.com. I'm sorry, sgt.dorsey.speaks@gmail.com. So the abbreviation for Sergeant, sergeantdorsey.speaks@gmail.com, or www.sergeantdorsey.speaks.com. I wanted to share something with you because I received, and I hope if you're watching today, I'm not going to say your name, but I hope that you don't mind me sharing this message that you sent to me today, because you never know how you affect a person, and I always hope in what I say that I will say something that will resonate with someone. And so I was recently interviewed on another YouTube channel by someone, and it's called The Advice Show. And it was clear to me in the interview that the host, if you will, was trying to steer the conversation in one direction and trying to get me to say things that I'm not in agreement with, and I wasn't gonna say. I speak truth, and sometimes it's pro community, and other times it's pro police. But I speak the truth. And so I received this comment, and I just want to read it to you. It says, I saw you on The Advice Show, which I don't like because of a video he had stating, why should we help the police? They don't help us. Willie D also made a similar statement. I am a disabled police officer with 9 years on a police department, and on January 13th, 2006, I was involved in an on-duty fatality of a 14-year-old burglar. In other words, he shot and killed a 14-year-old burglar. This person says, I'm still struggling with that to this moment. I was put on trial by activists before I was indicted and put on trial and eventually found not guilty. It took the state 4 years to make a decision. I had to make I'm singing to the choir. In other words, he's saying it took them 4 years to make a decision. He had to make it in a moment, right, in the field. He says, when I saw your video, I again felt hope. I feel that you know where I'm coming from and how I'm feeling. I would always say, I would give my life for citizens. I refuse to let anyone hurt me. I meant that. Was I wrong? I really missed that career. I didn't have that save the world mentality. I dropped that after I left Desert Storm. I'm just starting the healing process of my life. You spoke truth, it seems, as people can't grasp and understand, don't want to understand, that not all officers are dirty, crooked, underhanded, etc. What will it take for society to see that? And then he says, I talked your ear off enough. Thank you for listening. And so I responded back to this person just to say, first, I wanted to know that, I understand, and that I was going to be keeping this person in my prayers and thoughts, because obviously he's dealing with some issues and he's struggling still for some years later with something that, no cop wants to take a life. But I wanted him to know, number one, that I was responsive to his comments. I in fact got them and responded personally to him and asked that he stay in touch. And so for anyone else who might be listening to me, who may be law enforcement and who may be struggling with some issues, that's why I always say, when I say what I say and I do what I do, your agreement's not required. You can't please everybody in, this life, and it's very difficult. You will spend a lot of wasted hours, if you will, trying to do something that is going to be pleasing to someone else. And I think as long as you try not to do any harm and you act without malice, then the hope is that people will see your genuineness and appreciate it. And for those who don't, they don't. So thank you, sir, for reaching out to me, and I wish you continued health in your recovery and continued blessings in your journey. Now, on to another story. I came across something over in New Jersey, and I think this is kind of a big deal. This is an example, in my opinion, of what happens when we get involved and engaged. The governor over in New Jersey, his name is Phil Murphy. He's a Democrat, and under intense pressure from religious leaders and advocates, that means community folks, got involved and got engaged, and they held him to some campaign promises that he made with regards to police reform. And so what happened over there in New Jersey, as the governor, he recently signed legislation which takes fatal police shooting inquiries out of the hands of the county prosecutors and puts it in the hands of state investigators. And I think it must be called Senate, maybe it's S for Senate Bill 1036. S1036 is the legislation that the governor signed over there, so that now you'll have what might be considered an independent reviewer of fatal police shootings, and that's a good thing. And that happened because I would imagine folks started attending community meetings and started asking some tough questions. So, that's a great first step over there in New Jersey, and hopefully that's a model that will be followed in other states. Also, I want to kind of do a quick follow-up on another story that I talked about before. Okay, excuse me. Nose is running. Okay, so another story that I did several months ago. I went to state capitol up in Sacramento, met with some legislators along with Assemblywoman Sheila Weber. Some of you may have seen the picture that I took with her, because she's trying to put forth some legislation with regards to when police officers can use deadly force in California. And there was much pushback from unions and associations here in California. And so now she has reworded and reworked the legislation. It has a different name. It is now called the California Act to Save Lives. And there were some minor tweaks to this particular legislation. So for those in California who have an interest in when officers can use deadly force, pay attention to the California Act to Save Lives that is currently being talked about and legislated. And then lastly, another follow-up story. I had talked about a week or so ago, LAPD Metro unit stopping folks inordinately in black areas, proactive, what they call pretext stops. I call Metro, the elephant hunters. They don't respond to radio calls. They're out there doing the Lord's work, and we didn't really need a report to show that. But anyway, there was a study that showed they were stopping way more blacks than they were anybody else. And so word got to Garcetti, and Garcetti wrote a letter, because that's what police chiefs understand. That's why I always say create a paper trail. Garcetti wrote a letter and wanted Metro officers to stop targeting black drivers in South Central. He said he was concerned about the statistics. And so he has ordered LAPD to scale back vehicle stops in response to the investigation. Now, he's ordered Metro units to scale back vehicle stops. I don't know what happens if you're on foot. Do they scale back the vehicle stops and start making more pedestrian stops? Because police officers, we're a crafty bunch, and we figure out a way to work around most most rules and regulations if we just need to. So no more pretext stops, because pretext stop meaning, let me follow you long enough to see if you straddle. Do you have tint on your windows? Do you have no plates on your car like me? Because I drive dirty. I got window tint and no plates. So I'm a reason for a pretext stop, and I get that. But for those of you who, don't have that get out of jail free card that I have, if you got tint on the front windows, you might want to take it off. And if you're driving around with no plates, you might want to put them back on, just so you don't wind up giving the police a reason to stop you. Or, forget to signal, or, sometimes it could just be that you don't have any bumps on your bumper and they just need a reason to stop you, and then pray to the warrant God that there's a warrant in the system that you didn't take care of because you got a ticket and you let it go to warrant, right? So that's what Metro does. So no more traffic stops, Metro, but that doesn't mean they can't stop you if you're walking around. So just know that. And while Metro may be scaling back on their traffic stops, the Inspector General over there found out that LAPD gang unit was cutting up too, and that they were doing some things that were just a little left of center. So it's interesting that, they have these reports that show foolishness is going on, but they haven't really said what they're going to do about it. So the report from the Inspector General found that in more than half of the stops by gang officers that they examined during a 2-month period last summer, where people were subsequently searched, it was determined that the searches may have been unconstitutional. And so I'm just wondering, IG, if the searches may have been unconstitutional, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stop it? Or do you just let it go on? Do you discipline the officers? What do you do? I don't know. We'll see. So I'm going to keep monitoring, these pretext stops by Metro and the gang unit, and see what ultimately happens, because truth be told, I think that really if Mayor Garcetti or the Inspector General here in Los Angeles wanted to stop these errant officers, these out of control, drunk with power, metropolitan elephant hunters and gang officers from doing the things that they're doing that are deemed to be unconstitutional, which sounds like it might be police misconduct and maybe illegal as well. It's a simple fix: accountability. That's the thing that's missing from all of this, is holding the police officers accountable. And so once you start holding police officers accountable, Chief Michael Moore, when you start holding your officers accountable for those illegal, unconstitutional searches and excessive, inordinate traffic stops, then they'll stop doing it. They'll stop doing it. So. Oh, okay, Paula, give me some bling plates. Okay. So anyway, so that's it. That's all that I have for you today. And we will do this again on next Wednesday. And until then, I want you guys to remember to visit my website, www.sergeantcheryldorsey.com, for information about where I might be speaking, for an opportunity to purchase my book and get an autographed copy. And if you just want to purchase it without a signed copy, you can purchase my book, Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate, on Amazon.com. And I've had a couple of people, I'm going to just show you this, because I've had a couple of people tell me, and I appreciate it, that my book is backwards. But listen, you guys, it's not backwards. It's not upside down. I'm talking on my iPad in the reverse direction, right? So that's why it looks like my book, because this is what it would look like if it were upside down, just so you know. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and tell me that, and I don't want you guys to think that I'm having a senior moment some kind of way and I'm slipping and I don't know what I'm doing because my book is upside down. It's not. It's all good. So Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate, available at Amazon. Signed copies available at www.sergeantcheryldorsey.com. Subscribe to my website. Subscribe to my podcast, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. Do like this page, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, and visit my YouTube channel, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, and follow me there as well. So until next time, you guys, be good and be safe. Bye-bye.